On October 10, 1986, 700 Korean Canadians, Japanese Canadians, and others gathered to protest against Japan's alien registration law and its mistreatment of foreigners, especially those Koreans and Chinese born and raised in Japan. The struggle against this blatant symbol of Japanese discrimination has its roots in the emperor system. Let us try to put this struggle in the context of world history. On an August day in 1908, 2,000 Indian immigrants in South Africa burned their registration certificates in protest against discriminatory laws which had been imposed on Indians. The laws included provisions requiring all Indians 8 years of age or older to comply with fingerprinting and to carry the certificates at all times. 2 months later, 40-year-old Mahatma Gandhi was imprisoned on charges of refusing to be fingerprinted, as well as organizing civil disobedience campaigns. In the summer of 1985, thousands of people in Japan with alien status followed in Gandhi's footsteps by using civil disobedience to protest the fingerprinting required by Japan's alien registration law. What is the cause of this mass cry for justice in Japan? Approximately 680,000 Korean residents are living in Japan, and about 90% of them are either second, third, or fourth generation Koreans born in Japan. The Korean residents in Japan are severely discriminated in the Japanese society. The root cause of the discrimination is found in the idea that Japanese as a race are homogeneous. The falsity of this idea tends to create exclusion of other races from the Japanese society, along with discriminatory policies. In short, the rationale of such policies is, if they do not want to be discriminated against, then either they should become assimilated with the Japanese or leave Japan and go back to Korea. Yet, it was not their choice to come here in the first place. Koreans that were forced economically or physically to Japan later lost their Japanese citizenship, and on April 28, 1952, the Korean residents in Japan became subject to the alien registration law. At that time, the resistance of Koreans to the fingerprinting of all foreign residents was so strong that it could not be carried out until 1955, and then only with strong police action and heavy criminal penalties against the 263 who refused. In 1980, the struggle against the alien registration law was renewed and has become an international concern, bringing light to the issue of discrimination in Japan.
I would like to extend a warm welcome and sincere thanks to all of you. With the law, the Japanese government has forced the Koreans in Japan to be fingerprinted like Japanese criminals and forced them to carry the alien registration card at all times like the blacks in South Africa. Although Japan has been well revered for its leadership role in the field of education, culture, advanced science, and highly developed technology, it has been equally known for its racial and social discrimination against the minority group.
As Canadians, you have a vote. You can run for political office, and you can claim under the Constitution the same basic rights and freedoms and accept the same responsibilities as any other Canadian. How different is life for Japan's ethnic minorities, her 700,000 Koreans and Chinese and Taiwanese, among others. In spite of the fact that the first generation among them had Japanese citizenship under the colonial period, they are now considered aliens, forced to carry on their persons at all times this alien registration booklet containing their fingerprint. Now you may be wondering, what is so bad about having to give your fingerprint every 3 to 5 years, or even just once, as the government intends in the future? Why did more than 17,000 people refuse to fingerprinted last year. Why are there still 1,500 holding out? Among them, my husband. Many people who love that country, Japan, who have lived there for more than 25 or 30 years, and who are threatened with deportation. I ask you to imagine yourself as a Korean of 16 years of age, born in that country, as were your parents and probably your grandparents too. You know no other language. You know no other home. Your friends are Japanese. The food you eat is Japanese. The education you have had has fitted you for taking your place within Japanese society. All of a sudden, as your fingerprint is rolled not once, but 4 times onto different forms in a city office at the age of 16, you realize that you are different. You are different, and you are suspect because of your ethnic difference. You are being shown in no uncertain terms that you are under the control of authorities who may stop you on the street at any time and with no provocation demand to see this alien registration booklet. At that point, my friends, your confidence in your future and your image of yourself as a person of worth within Japanese society does a nosedive. And why should that be so, even now in 1986? I suppose in most countries that there are skeletons in our national closets that we would prefer to keep hidden. As a Canadian, I'm not proud of how our government treated its loyal and hard-working Japanese minority during the war years. I'm not proud that even now, no compensation has been offered to them for what they suffered during those years. But there are signs that justice is going to be done in the near future. I want to believe the same thing is possible in Japan. You see here the preamble to the Japanese Peace Constitution. We desire to occupy an honored place in an international society, striving for the preservation of peace and the banishment of tyranny and slavery, oppression and intolerance for all time from the earth. We recognize that all peoples of the world have the right to live in peace, free from fear and want. Lofty ideals, yes, and rightly so. But the alien registration law, used so repressively for the last 40 years, was pushed through the Japanese Diet only one day before this new peace constitution came into effect in 1947. Surely the government and people of Japan should be called on to honor the spirit of their own constitution. Surely it is time for them to broaden their concept of what is meant by the people of Japan. Surely ethnic minorities who have been part of that society for 3 and 4 generations have earned the right to be included, just as you are very definitely numbered among the people of Canada after a much shorter time. Let us tell Japan that we expect more of her. As a country which even now sits on the United Nations Commission of Human Rights, as the only country in the world ever to suffer the horror of an atomic holocaust, and which thus can be expected to know the desperate need for all of us to begin where we are to create peace and harmony. The world needs a Japan which is more than just an economic animal. It is time for her to display moral leadership as well. She must do, if she truly wants to occupy that honored place among the nations as her constitution states. Japan, we are waiting, but our patience is growing thin. Thank you.
네, 다음은 토론토 동부 한인
나카소네 일본 수상이 질문은 일생 동안 한 번 하고 그만두는 것이 좋겠다는 그러한 간사한 이야기를 최근에 했는데, 어떤 여자가 한 번 일생 동안 강간당하는 건 괜찮고
Fingerprinting and the constant possession of the registration card symbolize the discrimination they encounter in education, employment, housing, marriage, etc., etc.
It seems to me that in a democracy, it's essential that the respect for the individual be maintained and that every person is treated with equality. And it's so painfully noticeable to all of us that that respect doesn't exist when people are fingerprinted for no good reason. It's wrong. I trust that Japan, over a long period of time, wishes to have a good and solid democracy. A country, New Democrats call on Japan to now stop the fingerprinting of so-called aliens. The fingerprinting law must end.
Only in the religious and political areas are animosities still prevalent and dangerous. The fingerprinting of Japanese citizens of Korean descent should be condemned, and I condemn it.
Locate during Second World War the possessions and the pride taken away by the Canadian government. We also have this alien law in Japan that institutionalized inequality. Has Mr. Nakasone not learned from history? Any country and its leaders that does not respect the human rights of its citizens will be judged harshly by the world.
We Canadian citizens who are concerned about freedom, equality, peace, and human rights are gathered today, October 4th, 1986, at the Nathan Phillips Square, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, to make a sincere attempt to restore human rights for Korean residents and other foreigners in Japan. Therefore, we demand the following resolutions. Resolution 1, complete abolition of the fingerprinting requirement. 2, annulment of the requirement of carrying the registration passbook at all times. 3, equal opportunities of education and employment for Koreans in Japan. 4, equality and justice for all Koreans living and working in Japan. 5, maintenance of accurate and correct records of both Japanese and Korean history in their textbooks. Our campaign should neither adopt any form of physical violence nor generate any type of hatred or hostility directed towards the Japanese or any other nationals. Our campaign will eventually get support from world citizens who care about social justice and human rights.
네, 감사합니다.
우리 승리하리라. 우리 승리하리라. 우리 승리하리라. 그날에 참만으로.
The 700 participants, after singing We Shall Overcome Together, marched to the Japanese consulate to present their protest and appeal. Contacts with Canadian government authorities led them to initiate inquiries of the Japanese government and in the United Nations Human Rights Commission. And the struggle continues.